Like my boy Buzz Lightyear says, to infinity and beyond. And this dial is literally beyond. Beyond beautiful, that is. So, guys, if you're new here, my name is Troy, I'm bold, and I collect watches. And today, I get hands on with something extra special. You could say it's out of this world. So, enough of my terrible puns. Let's look at what I'm reviewing, and that is the Starlight from British micro brand Quasar. The Quasar Starlight is due to launch on Kickstarter on May the 1st. But my marketing head would have said a date of May the 4th be more fitting. You know, because of May the 4th be with you? Okay, so I know I said I'd be done with the terrible puns, but it does make so much sense. But let's not worry about that. A few days earlier is fine because it gives you a few extra days to grab the watch at an early bird price of £250, which is about $310, and I can't really knock this at that price. The full RRP is £500, which is great for that psychological pricing of keeping it under £500. But the disadvantage is you do then open yourself up for more competition. And for example, could the Starlight go head to head with a Seiko Presage? And that's another fine example of a sub £500 watch with an extraordinary dial. So I've mentioned the dials, and that is because the dial is what this watch is all about. There's no two ways about that. When the dial is the star of the show, the rest of the watch gets forgotten about. Well, for me, it does anyway. And time again, I've said the dial is what draws me in. And when I saw the Starlight on my Instagram feed, I was all over this. So to be approached by Adam to get hands on with one, I just couldn't pass up on that opportunity. This one, unfortunately, will be finding its way back to Adam, but nevertheless, I'm going to really enjoy my time with it. The dial is made of goldstone, a synthetic colored crystal glass, often seen in a more common red format because of the inclusion of copper. There are also non copper versions like the goldstone used here for the dial of the Starlight. By substituting the copper for manganese, you get a variant fitting of what Adam wanted to achieve, and that is something to showcase his love of astronomy with a love of watches. If you wanted a piece of the night sky on your wrist, or something that at least resembles the night sky, I don't think Adam could have chose a better material. So granted, it may be flashy for some of you guys out there, but under certain lights, the crystallized inclusions are less visible. So earlier I mentioned within its pricing, you would maybe compare this to something like a Presage. The Presage line from Seiko is probably the best example of how you do a dial for under £500. Some of the cocktail times look a lot more expensive than their price tags, and I'm getting the same vibes here with the Starlight, and I'm pretty sure Seiko haven't used such materials for their dials. But it wasn't all about how well the dial looks. For example, if we look at these indexes, what do they remind you of? For me, I'm getting the Stargate vibes. So, yes, that's a nickname reserved for a line of Seikos, but like the portal of Stargate with its triangular accents, this too has triangular accents because of their indexes. So, fitting a sci fi classic in a watch inspired by the universe is a clever nod, whether it's intentional or not. And it still fits in well with this design language. I also like how Adam has gone with these more petite, thinner hands. Because of the large logo, having these thinner hands allows you to see more of this dial, which of course is the star of the show, and it's a rather sensible choice. I briefly mentioned the logo, and for me, I find it a tad overpowering. I think the official logo is actually really cool. It looks like a watch that resembles the Starship Enterprise. It's super cool. But could we have had just at the 12 o'clock mark, just seen the brand name and dropped the Starlight model name to maybe the 6 o'clock where we see the word automatic? I think that would have helped the dial feel a little less cluttered. But there is something extra special about the logo, and I'm going to show you that later on. Along the chapter ring is a printed minute track. I did check with Adam, and as much as he wanted to have the chapter ring also made in goldstone, it just couldn't work. And it's because it's quite a fragile material. But how he's managed to make it look like goldstone is outstanding. So much so, I had to check that it wasn't goldstone before I made this review. And to finish it off, we have a non framed date window. Again, you frequent viewers know I do prefer to have it framed, but here I think the better choice was made because we don't want too much to detract from the dial. Sometimes when buying a watch, we don't really consider how well it will wear. So let's see what it will look like on the wrist and let's see those essential dimensions. Going with an all polished case was a sensible choice, adding to the overall extravagance that Adam is trying to achieve with this timepiece. With the dazzle of the dial, I think any brushing would have subdued and watered down the look of this watch. There is some added flair with the polished chamfered lugs. There is also a very subtle intern which helps in adding more flair. The case is constructed of 316 stainless steel, not the more widely used 316L variant. If you're unsure of the difference, so was I. So after some research, I found out that the L version of the steel is a low carbon variant. This is more useful in a dive watch, for example, because the 316L stainless steel is less prone to corrosion. Had this watch been a dive watch, for example, I would have questioned this choice, though both 316 and 316L are marine grade stainless steel, and it's really not that necessary for the Starlight. If we now take a look at the case back, we can see the Quasar logo and we have our specifications. It shows we have 100 meters of water resistance and is made of stainless steel and has a sapphire crystal. Even though I feel we do not need to worry too much about the water resistance for this model, it's nice to know that no corners were cut and the back is a screw down case back and has a very respectable 100 meters of water resistance. We now move on to the crown, which has a really nice touch. The Quasar Starlight has, and what I interpret it to be, a UFO as the crown. We have a curved polished piece of blue acrylic, and it has some really handy knurling here. It's just ample enough to grip and to wind. I'm a fan of a sapphire crystal, and I wasn't disappointed to see the Starlight to come included with a sapphire crystal. Though the review piece is said to have a flat sapphire crystal, I can see some distortion, but I did have it clarified that all final models will indeed benefit from a more curved sapphire crystal. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I think it will replicate almost the design of the crown, so it'll be good to see what the final production model will look like. A lot can be said of microbrands opting for the NH35, some positive and some negative. Some of you may have grown tired of the inclusion of this popular movement, but it is popular for a reason. It's a reliable workhorse movement that allows us collectors to get into the hobby at a price we can afford. And that's only a positive, right? If you're a new viewer and new to collecting, the NH35 is a Seiko Instruments movement. It's the included movement in many Seiko watches, and you might see it branded as the 4R35. But when this movement is distributed to other watch brands, it's badged as the NH35. So inside the Quasar Starlight, you're actually benefiting from those years worth of experience that Seiko brings to the watch game. The movement has a power reserve of 41 hours, beats at 21,600 beats per hour, and has 24 joules. You can also expect an accuracy of -20 to +40 seconds per day. Now, on to the part of the review that I was really looking forward to, and that was to showcase the loom. This has some fantastic loom for a non dive watch. Let's check it out. So, as you can see, even the logo is loomed. So, for me, having it so large now makes sense. So now we're going to go on to the part of the review that I wasn't looking forward to, and that's to talk about this strap. I always feel like the bad guy to talk about the negatives of someone's passion project, something that someone has put love into, but a negative here for me, unfortunately, is the strap. Compared to what I have in my collection and what I've sampled in the past, this strap just doesn't cut it. Now, granted, this watch does come with the bracelet, but I have to talk about what I have here on hand. It isn't a bad strap, but as an added extra that you'll be charged for, I can't say that this strap is worth more than maybe £15 at tops. You might all be shouting at the screens and saying, but why, Troy? Okay, so I'll tell you why. For me, it feels too thin. I would have preferred a more substantial feeling and a stiffer strap. I would like to have seen the blue match the blue of the dial. So a darker shade for me would have been a much better choice. And I'd like to have seen the buckle as a standard style and not a deployant clasp. The stitching has been done well and the crocodile style is okay, but to me, it lets the watch down, and I think maybe a better idea was to bundle this strap as an added extra. But we're not going to finish this review on a negative note because it's time for me to tell you what I rate and what I hate. But before I do, please, if you like this content, give it a thumbs up. If you want to keep in the loop and see my future videos, then please hit the subscribe button. So, my gripes, along with the strap, is the logo. It could have benefited from being smaller because this watch gives me a more flashier vibe of the Tissot Gentleman and the Dress KX, and that is what this watch could have been. But the logo, unfortunately, I feel overpowers the dial. But like I said before, it does benefit a little bit because it has lume applied to it. So it really isn't all that bad. But what do I rate? I love the highly polished case. It fits the brand well and a good choice for their first release. Along with the dial, what a way to come out the blocks by tying in your brand with your first launch. Adam has taken his love of astronomy and watches and has made a very decent offering. I like the fact that this is so unusual, it'll fit almost every collection out there without the risk of being too similar to something you already own. I'm excited to see where Quasar are heading. The brand owner is responsive to any messages I've had, which shows me that you, the potential buyer, will also benefit from such quick communication. Again, that's something I rate. Top notch service. Things are looking up for this brand. Let's see if this Kickstarter project goes to infinity and beyond its reach goal. Remember to check out the project on May the 1st. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. Remember, I'm an enthusiast and not an expert, and I'll see you all in a future video. Cheers.